Well, these are challenging times that we live in, aren't they? You think of Ukraine and everything that's happening there, everything's going on in the States. But there's more than that. There's challenges to democracies around the world. The rise of fascism, power of a few, and the power of oligarchs who feel they know more than other people do and want to control everything that the people do. The power of a few over the power of the people. China, Russia, Brazil, USA. Wealthy oligarchs calling the shots. Free flow of information is challenged. The media, including social media, trying to be used for their own ends to capture people's minds, and young people and old alike, and develop and harbor it, repeat time and time again, just like rumors as they're passed around in olden days, so social media these days. You start off something, it doesn't have to be true, but you tell your neighbor, once it's out there, it doesn't just go to the guy next door or just to the congregation. It goes to everybody. Elon Musk tweeted something the other day and it went to 50,000 people before it was taken down 10 minutes later. It was a negative comment about something. And it's just crazy the way it goes. And there's so much going on. An old moderator of the United Church, Principal Oliver, they called him, he said that God has a voice for every age. That's what he said. It was just after World War I. Well, not long after World War I. And that's true, God has a voice. But what is God's voice saying to us today? What is God's voice saying to you and to me for this age? And that's a question. Well, the first thing is to remember what's gone on before, to remember the past. And that's the main reason we're here today, in a way, is to remember the past. But there's two parts to this. That's the whole past and what they say when they say throw the torch. If you wanted a title for this sermon, it would be Throwing the Torch. Are you ready to catch it? There's so much to remember. It's hard for us to get our minds around the sheer numbers of young people from every creed, culture, and nation that joined up and went to war on behalf of Canada. As countries grow, Canada has a small population, and yet it seemed like every family had one or two members or relatives who were involved in one of the World War I or World War II. Almost 10% of Canada's population of 7 million served in the armed forces during the First World War, and nearly 60,000 of those died. The great Allied victories of 1918 were spearheaded by Canadian troops. Largely, they were farm boys, and they proved themselves well as the most capable soldiers in the entire British order of battle. At the beginning of the Second World War, the Canadian Navy had half a dozen vessels. Most of them begged or borrowed or loaned or given to us by others. That number increased dramatically, and they ended up policing nearly half the Atlantic against U-boat attacks. As corvettes were built across the country, and so much more was done. More than 120 Canadian warships, along with 10,000 sailors, participated in the landing at Normandy when we went back to take the continent. During that time, 15,000 soldiers went ashore, and on that day alone, the RCAF contributed 15 fighter and fighter-bomber squadrons to the assault. Canada finished the war, the Second War, with the third largest Navy and the fourth largest Air Force in the world. Our nation, because of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan and because of what we contributed, was called the Aerodrome of Democracy. There's something to think about. We did well. We served well. We did our best. Caught up as we are between the old world and the new, between Britain and the United States, so influenced as we are by their media, that a lot of military history has been forgotten. And the world has forgotten it as well as the average Canadian. Did you know that since 1950, our amazing country, with about 1% of the world's population, has contributed 10% of the world's peacekeepers? Canadian soldiers in the past century have been the most highly respected peacekeepers on earth. And 39 missions with UN mandates, 6 with non-UN peacekeeping duties in Vietnam to East Timor, from Sinai to Bosnia. Peacekeeping and now, sadly, peacemaking. And there are others, NATO missions in to here, there, and everywhere, into Afghanistan. While Canada is not a warrior nation, we have done our part. Our sons, our daughters, our brothers, our sisters, our fathers and mothers have done their part, and then some. Whenever Canadian soldiers and sailors and airmen have been properly equipped, trained and disciplined and led, they've received accolades from friend and foe. They have fought with passion and humane compassion to protect the innocent and to maintain the right. Our citizen soldiers have done their part, and they continue this day to do it well. The veterans then and now, especially the wounded and the broken, and the families of the dead, should receive our greatest appreciation and care. And there is more. On November the 11th, 1933, the insightful Sir Arthur Currie, commander of the 1st Canadian Corps in World War I, he said this, that this day should be a reminder to every Canadian citizen that he still has a duty to discharge if the war to be fully won and its high objectives permanently secured. It should call us to a realization that we still have to complete the unfinished task of our dead comrades who speak to us with voiceless eloquence, the task of replacing the present system of suspicion and fear and conflict with the enduring fabric of confidence in humane law and order. We are to blame if we allow others interested only in greed to take the reins from our hands and drive us into another abyss. As the poet says, they throw to us the torch. We have a job to do. We can be proud of our sailors, airmen, and soldiers who've done so much. They've done their part, and they continue to do their part. They give us the time, the freedom to make this a better country, a better world. But it's our turn. It's your turn, and it's my turn to do our part. Now, I don't see too many people jumping up and running out the door to join the military. Not from this congregation. Not just at the moment. Don't expect that. But there are other ways in which we serve. We can grab the torch that they throw. There are so many things to be done. What can you do? Well, one thing is we can recommit to a world of peace and social economic justice. How do we do that? James Dawson's name was mentioned. Do you know, she works at the region now, at regional headquarters. It's getting more military all the time. Conference. She works for conference. And she puts out a newsletter on social justice every 2 weeks. It gets published on the conference website. And it contains all sorts of things, ideas on social justice, motivation, and things that we can do, events that are happening, including the event that's happening here next Sunday. There's so much that we can do. Jesus announced the coming of God's reign, a commonwealth not dominated by one person or by wealthy oligarchs, but a commonwealth of peace, justice, and reconciliation. He healed the sick, he fed the hungry, he forgave sins, he freed those held captive by all manner of demonic powers. Today that would be everything from alcohol and drugs to misinformation and the blue screens that sit in front of us and capture us and keep us from relating to other people. We believe that we can be strengthened by one another to do the work that's before us. He calls us to do that. He calls us to do the same through God's grace, to work to make us a better world. I always like little beavers in the scouting movement. They say, what is your job? You know, and they say our promise is to improve God's world, make God's world a better place. Take care of the world. Yeah, it's little guys. Take care of God's world. They can say that, but we can do our part too. We may not be able to clap our hands the way they did or to jump up and down, but we can do our part. We believe that we can strengthen one another and do our part. And we can't do it alone. We cooperate with the church, with congregations and groups of people. The United Church works with other faith traditions and people of goodwill to eliminate poverty and injustice, to identify its root causes, to protect those who are most vulnerable. Throughout Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, the United States, as well as in our own country, the United Church works with other churches and organizations we call partners. And that enables us to go beyond our normal reach in responding to social and economic injustice. And then, as we mentioned with COP, there's the environment. United Nations Climate and Change Conference, COP27, is taking place starting today in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And you are there. Did you know that? I bet you didn't know you were there. We're not in Egypt. No, we're in Victoria. I'm not losing my head just quite yet. But we're there through Kairos. The United Church has supported and backed, accredited Kairos and a committee that's called the For Love of Creation Delegation that will be at COP27. And they'll be sending back regular reports on Instagram and Facebook and on their internet page, which is especially good. If you can't make it to Egypt and you don't have Instagram or Facebook, or you don't want to spend the time doing that, you can make it out next week though, next Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock for the demonstration for the Candles for COP27 short walk here at the church, 3 p.m. next Sunday. It's not much, but it's something. But the challenge of the world can be so large, so overwhelming, so unstoppable. And all these actions of justice, we're going to gather here, we're going to walk around the block, probably down to Pandora and out to Blanchard and back up here again. What can that do? It seems fruitless and ineffectual. And yet, it's often those small, unexpected things that seed something larger. You never know what's going to happen when you drop that seed and plant that seed. It's speaking up. The right person may see you and just be touched at that particular moment. There may be some way in which something that's said or done reaches out to a person. Somebody may walk along and say, "Who are you? What are you doing?" And it gives you an opening to talk about environmental justice. It gives you an opening to say, we've got to do something to take care of this world. And that may just trigger that person to go off and say, yes, I'm going to go back to school or change the topic I'm studying. I'm going to take part and talk to my uncle who's the Prime Minister, who's a member of Parliament, or there's something I can do. What can I do to help? And join in. And you never know, all these little actions lead up to so much. I have to remember that story. I'm sorry, I'm going on, I'm showing my age. I have to remember Percy, can't remember his name. There was a young medical man who was with us, the Patricias, Canadian the Patricia's Infantry Battalion, on an attack we were making. We were learning how the Marines go ashore. I may have told you this story before, but you've probably forgotten it. We were learning how the Marines go ashore, and we were down in San Diego, and we were all loaded into flat boats, and we were heading for the shore. And this young fellow named Percy, he looked out, and it was pretty rough. and he was bouncing around a lot, and we're in these flat-bottom boats, and we're roaring towards the shore, and it was kind of scary. And he looked at me and he said, "Padre, I'm scared. Are you?" And I said, "You'd be darn fool if you weren't scared." That's quite normal, but we're going to make it. Look, there's no problem. And he said, "You're a padre. Why are you here?" And with Italian, I'm here. I said, "Well, I'm here. Let's see now. Jesus said, Jesus went where people were. Jesus went with his people. And he didn't care where he went. He went into the front lines. And here I am with you here going ashore. And all will be well." And he said, "Great, yeah. Well, all was well." And we went ashore. And that's the last I saw him. We got mixed up in the thing. The exercise went on. A whole other long story there. But the bottom line was that about 10 years later, I was at a chaplain's retreat. And they were introducing the new chaplains. And lo and behold, there was Percy. He left the military for a while, went back to school, became a United Church clergyman, and he joined up as a chaplain. Did I have an influence on him? Who knows? But it may have been just that seed that was planted. And I didn't even know it was planted. You never know what a little seed is going to do and what a difference it's going to make in a person's life. A little bit of kindness, a little bit of reaching out, a little bit of acknowledgement, a little bit of appreciation for a job well done, and it was well done, and things like that. And it makes a difference to the world, to a person. It makes them feel better that day, and maybe it makes a difference to the way they live their life. And so you have it. Today we remember the military. We remember the part they've done. We remember that they've thrown to us the torch. And now it's our turn to do our part, make this planet a healthier place.